Welcome back. This is video 5 in our 7-part video series. If you're new here and you wonder what we're up to, let me tell you. Now, I took a plain wall in our 1990s Midwestern ranch-style living room that desperately needed a focal point. I framed a decorative fireplace, added drywall, prepared the surface. And now today in this video, we're going to start using small, manageable batches of vertical cement to actually sculpt stones to make yourself a stone fireplace. In a lifetime of DIY and remodeling, I sincerely believe this is the most impactful project I've ever built. If this sounds like something you're interested in, you're welcome to just jump right into this video. If you want to start from the beginning, I'm assembling the entire series in a playlist on the channel homepage. Now, some of the videos are a bit long, so I have been careful to timestamp and label each section so you can move through them as you need to, or if you decide to take on a project, you can always click back through for easy reference. Either way, I'm glad you're back, or I'm glad you're here for the first time. Let's get started. So sometimes you just can't find the material that you want in smaller bags, and you just have to take what's available, what's close by. So right now I have an 80-pound bag of type S mortar mix that I need to use for a project. And so I've got to get it out of my car and get it manageable. So this is a trick I have found. I can do, if you have an SUV or a pickup where you can pull this out on the tailgate, I just set my wheelbarrow underneath it like this, and I don't ever have to lift it. I just scoot it. And then it's in here. I open it up, get it all dumped out in the wheelbarrow, and then I can divide it up into containers. Now, a 5-gallon bucket like this will hold 40 pounds of material. If you want to break it down into 20 pounds, you can double layer brown paper grocery bags. You can put 20 pounds in one of these. I promise, we're almost to the fun part. We're almost ready to put some rocks up on the wall. So let's talk about what we have here. Our recipe for our vertical cement starts with 80 pounds of type S mortar mix. The brand doesn't seem to make any difference, but it does have to be type S. You want to make sure about that. Now, it's easiest to find 80-pound bags, but if you check around in your area, you can find it in 40-pound bags if that is easier for you. Now, I find it in 40-pound bags whenever I can. But if I have to get the 80-pound bags, I just get some help. I have it loaded at the store, and then I break it down into smaller batches when I get home. The secret sauce to the recipe is your vertical concrete additive. Now, I'm using TruPak X. There are lots of different brands on the market, but this is one that I find easy to get. It comes in smaller packages, so if you have to ship, shipping is a little less than some of the others. And it just gives me good, consistent results. Now, exactly what's in it, I'm not sure because it is a proprietary blend, but you can see it has fibers in it. I believe it probably has some clay, some powdered adhesives, and it's a special blend that just makes everything stick together and stick to your wall if it's properly prepared. It's just magic. Dump that all in together, the 80-pound bag of mortar mix and a full bag of the TruPak. And then I just start mixing with my mask on. That's very important because the stuff does fly. And you just mix and mix and mix and mix. And I will usually put my gloves on and I'll kind of go through it and just kind of do this because they're sometimes additive, it will clump together. So the very features that make it work well in what we're trying to do can be a problem when it just sits in the bag because it all wants to clump together. All you do is just go through there and just kind of break up those clumps as you feel them, and then just turn it with your shovel for quite a while. You mix it till you think it's mixed, and then mix some more. The liquid is just pure water. We don't have to use the acrylic fortifier that we used yesterday in the scratch coat. Okay, so let's talk about batching. Now, you don't have to divide this into batches. If you are working with one or two other people, you can just do a whole batch like this at once. You could do multiple bags, however you want to do it. So the only reason I'm talking about batching is because I know some of you will be like me, and you just have to take it in amounts that you can handle working alone. Well, I'm going to do it a third of a bag this time because we'll be doing a little bit of experimenting on film. Generally, I do half a bag. So I do 46 pounds. That's manageable for me. Now, it goes up faster. You know, the 40 pounds of this is going to go up faster than if we had done 40 pounds of that scratch coat because we're putting a thick layer. We're going to put a couple of inches of material so it doesn't go as far. But you want to have time to really pay attention to the texture that you're getting on your rocks. We want them to look really realistic. So we don't want to get to where we're just troweling it on so fast because we know it's going to set up on us. So that's why I talk about batches. I don't want you to think you have to do that, but I think it's very helpful to a lot of people to know that that's an option.
Mixing this material is pretty straightforward. You want to calculate how much water you need for the material that you have and pour in about 2/3 of that amount of water, and then dump your dry mix in on top of it, always with the mask on. And then you take your cement mixer, your paddle mixer, and you just start mixing it up. You'll want to take a shovel or a hoe and scrape the edges of the bucket regularly to make sure all the mix gets in, and add water out of your original measurement to it as needed, and you will end up with what looks like a pretty dry mix compared to other cement materials. So don't add extra water to it. It will be fine. First, we're going to go over the technique of using solid cement over our scratch coat to form our stones. Once it's up on the wall, the texturizing and the finishing is very much the same as the foam method, which will be in our next section.
I went ahead and put up my first batch so you can see what our goal is before I get started doing a video of actually applying it. This is a 30-pound batch, and as you can see how much territory we're covering here. All right, so the first thing, we want to wet this wall down really well. We'll wet it down about this far. And here is our mix. And this is just maybe just a little thick. But see how it holds its shape, and it will stick. I mean, it won't stick too long because my trowel is wet. And you can still see, those fibers sticking out on the edge? And that's why they're so important. They hold everything together, okay? So we're gonna spray again. That's how fast. You can see where this has turned white again. This is how fast concrete can soak up water. So we will be spraying and spraying and spraying. Okay. Get a big handful, smack it on the wall, push it up. Push it up, push it up. Smack it on the wall. And the reason to smack it, it's not because you need to get aggression out. It's because that's the best way to make sure that no air pockets get trapped behind it. And then I'm taking the palms of my hand and I'm pushing up. And we will take a tool and go around and clean up our grout lines. Now see how that is, I don't know if you can see how that is trying to roll back. So we're going to spray underneath it a little bit. And push back, push back, push back. Always pushing up. pushing up, and I'm pushing up. I'm not just pushing in toward the wall, I'm pushing up. And we're gonna make these horizontal ridges work for us. Now, I do not have a thickness measuring tool. You can use a ruler. You can take a piece of a coat hanger and bend it when you decide I want my rocks to be 2 inches thick, 3 inches thick. And you can bend that so that you can always go along and just poke that in. I have not done that here, and I probably should have for demonstration. But to a certain extent, I have decided the story I'm going to tell about this wall. This wall is a fieldstone wall. It's a wall that, you know, some farmer dug the rocks out of his fields and used mortar and stacked this wall. So it will have a little variation in it. So, you know, I wouldn't want it to get like a wavy surface. You can always stand back, like over to the side, and eyeball it down here. And if you see a place that's just getting way out of control, you can just take some material off or smash it. I'm doing here, we're smashing up. I don't know if I said this already, but this is about a 22-pound batch with about 52 ounces of water in it. And there again, also, if I haven't said this, you know, one day you may make the perfect batch that has 52 ounces, and the next day, you know, you'll make the perfect batch that has 48 ounces. It's very humidity dependent, how much humidity, how much moisture is in your cement product, how much humidity is in the air. So you want to start with about half of what you think you'll need, and then very slowly add up. Pushing up, pushing up. We're gonna wrap this one around. No, we're not going to yet because we haven't sprayed it. If you drop some at this point, you can pick it up and smash it back. If it sits there very long, you don't want to use it because it will have already started drying out. That is trying to curl back there. Put a little more liquid. Smoosh it. And it's okay if it touches this rock next to it because we're going to dig out grout lines. So that's okay. Oops, we've gotten past the point where we've sprayed it. I think I went down a little below it. Spray, spray, spray. You know, if you're getting to the end of a batch and it starts getting stubborn, you can spray this and then smack it up there. Now, I know it's lumpy now. We're going to go back with a trowel when we get most of it up and start smoothing and pushing it down in. This is a really good workout if you need one, which I do. Okay, it's a little thin right here. I can tell that I need some more product up here. And you'll notice I use the term product a lot. I did decorative finishing for so many years, and you use such a variety of materials that you just, when you go to classes, everybody just refers to it as product. I hear the same thing when I'm at the salon getting my hair done. In this case, it's carving mix. But if I say product, you know what I mean. We're just going to go ahead, since it is a small batch, I'm going to put it all up here. Spray again. Let me spray this because we'll need to take you over here just a little bit. So right here, when you go around, now think about what you want this rock to be. This rock is the side of whatever rock you end up cutting out over here. Smash, smash, smash. Oop, I went down. You always want to be lifting up. We'll pull some of that away. Down here, do have a dry chunk in it. Push up, push up, push up. And rocks, because I'm doing fieldstone, you may want something different for your rocks. You may decide you want some kind of cut limestone or something, and you will do yours in a nice orderly rectangular shape. That is fine. But I want mine a little wonky. Mine was done by somebody who knew how to make it a sturdy wall, but didn't necessarily know how to make it as perfect as a professional mason would make it. We're going to go ahead and carry down here. Am I still in your line of sight here? Smash, push up. And it's kind of, it's you'll see when you do it, it makes a big difference whether you push up or put it on and smash it down. Because you're working, the horizontal ribs help a little, but you're still working against gravity. You know, this has a lot of special components to it, but this thing still weighs about, I don't know, 12 ounces. I mean, you're still working with heavy weight or with some density and weight against gravity. So you have to always be reminding it which way you want it to go. I am pushing really hard. The grunting was not just for effect. Okay. So now, what can you do here? You can do any darn thing you want. And that is why this is so fun. You could decide that you wanted this whole entire wall to be one solid rock. Like you had built this, I'm in a basement here, or in the lower level of a house. You can make it look like you decided to build this up against some giant rock. You can decide it's granite. You can decide it's marble. You can decide it's whatever you want it to be. So let's give you some examples here. So let me take, now I am using, and my little ledge here is very small for all the stuff I'm trying to corral. This rounded trowel, I've always heard it called a pool trowel. I'm using it because we don't want applicator marks. Now, when you're trying to create something and make it look natural, you don't want man-made applicator marks to show unless there's some kind of a decorative mark that you intend to leave there. So this rounded edge kind of keeps you from getting straight lines through here. Now this trowel is good for corners. I used it up here at this where the ceiling met the wall, and I'll use it down here in this corner. But that's about all I will use it for. And I have a bigger pool trowel here somewhere, but I think I left it in the driveway when I rinsed everything off. Okay, we're gonna get it a little bit wet, the trowel anyway, and we're gonna just start pushing up. And right here, we're gonna make sure that we don't carry this out past where we can open the window. But I'll go by and clean that up later. Rinse, 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 rinse. We're moving material a little bit. We're always going upward. Now see where I just dug that in, and some material fell off? You don't want to do that. You want to keep like this edge just ever so slightly off the wall. I don't know if you can tell how I have it here. And you're always pushing with this back edge. The leading edge is off the surface. Okay, we're going to get this up pretty smooth because I want to show you something. Okay, now see where that grabbed right there? It's because I had some product, some cement building up on here. This is the acrylic fortifier and water at a 50-50 mix. Now, that's not perfectly smooth. I need the bigger trowel if I was going to get it perfectly smooth, but since we're not doing that, but I want to show you something that you could do. Okay, now this is that stamp I showed you. Now we're going to spray the daylights out of this thing with our multi-purpose cooking spray / concrete release spray. We're going to let some of that drip off. All right, this has 2 handles at the back, and we're just going to, since we're not leaving this, we're not going to put a level on it. Normally you would want to put a level on it at least for the first pass, for the first row, and you push and pound, 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 pound. And you very carefully, look, can you see that? Let me do it over here because I'm not sure you can see it. And then this will line up, it will pick up where it left off. So let's get this over here. Can you see that? So you could do, it's a little bit messy because it's a little bit wet. Normally we would put this up here and let it sit just a while, kind of get itself together before we started trying to do a stamp like this. But that gives you an idea. You could do a whole wall with a stacked stone like this. I think of this for a fireplace. It would be a really nice transitional or modern finish for a fireplace surround. All right. Now that is not what we're doing here. So before it starts to set up, we're gonna make that go away. Like the commercial, like it never even happened. I'm pushing up. I'm pushing all my pressure on the back, and the front is just tipped up just a little. If we went up too much, we'd start making, here we go. If I push too much on the back side, you start getting that. We don't want that. Just a little bit. And I could tell you 100 times, but until you do it, you won't know what I'm talking about probably. But once you do it, you'll figure it out pretty quickly what we're doing here. Okay, so you can see like this is a little, well, maybe you can't. This is a little thicker here. It's a little thinner here. But let's remember, this is not a perfect rock wall done by some master mason. This is a farm. This is fieldstone from a farmhouse. All right. Now, stand back. Now, these up here, the stones I have up here aren't really that big. And if you think about it, if you were going to build a stone wall, you would put smaller stones at the top and your bigger stones would be at the bottom. So we're going to start adding a few bigger, most of our bigger stones will probably be down here in the corner, but our stones are going to start getting a little bit bigger than they were. Okay, we're going to take out a mortar line right here. And we'll be able to pick that back up if we need it somewhere. Okay, now the hardest part for me is random. I think random is the hardest thing to do. But you don't want to get any kind of pattern in here that's going to make it look fake. So let's see. We're going to imagine that our windows have just some irregular rocks out the side. Okay. We don't want another one exactly the same size, so we're going to make a kind of a vertical rock here. Making sure I don't get out of your view. And this is essentially just sketching in our grout lines. We'll make them bigger. Okay, now this is what I was talking about right here. Can you see that? You see this right here? Now we either need to make that a big, like a chunk of grout, or we need to maybe build in a small rock that would have been a filler rock. We'll decide here in a minute. But we wouldn't want to just make that grout line because it's very unlikely that you're going to go out in the field and find a rock that has exactly this little foot sticking out to fit between these two rocks. So think about that. Okay, this is going to come down a little bit. And it's going to come up. It's going to come up. You can change these, so don't like agonize over it. And I'm going to put a longer, kind of bigger rock there. Okay, now right here is a funny little space. So we're going to imagine that we have some kind of, oh, we lost some light here. Uh-oh, battery died on my camera light. Okay, I think you can still see. I've got two other lights in here. We're going to make kind of a funky looking little rock here that just filled in the space. All right, so we're going to come back here. What's this rock going to do? This rock is going to be sort of like this. Now, we have a rock over here. We don't want to come right over here and make it like a row of little rocks. So this is going to be, we're going to make up the difference here with mortar. So this is just going to be a big sort of a diamond or a triangle of an extra wide mortar line. Okay. We're going to come around here. Okay, we're going to change this rock just a little bit. This rock is going to be more like this. And then we're going to move another big chunk of mortar right here. Okay, so what do we do here? I don't want a little rock here and a little rock here, but you know what? I think we may have to. So we're gonna, and sometimes when I have little rocks like this, I'll add a little more material to them. And so it's like somebody just stuck a little, maybe a little rounded rock that sticks out a little more than the others right there. Okay, let's take this. We're going to make this. This was a little more square. And then this rock is very irregular. Comes up like this. And like this. Excuse me, like that. And then let's just pull this out right here completely. And that's another thing. As you start and stop between batches, you want an irregular shape. Just in case, say for instance, my next batch included a new bag of mortar. Just in case there's a little bit difference in the color, texture, you don't want a straight line to see that difference. If it's kind of irregular and you've got a rock up here that's a little different than this, it's not going to make a lot of difference because we're going to put color on it and we're done. Or when it dries, rather. Now, what are we going to do with this rock? We're going to make this rock one big thing. Am I still? Yeah. And it's got something kind of funky going on right here, and we're going to leave it that way. See how there's almost a hole there? Because that's what rocks do. All right. So we have it sketched out. I'm going to take this. I'm going to get a little bit soupy. We're going to push that in there. We're going to make a cute little rock. They just picked up off the riverbank. And one of the kids stuck it in here while he was trying to build the wall. All right. So, texture. Now, I didn't tell you about these, and I am not going to include the instructions in this video, but I will put a link to, I'll do another short video, and I'll put a link to it. These are silicone and cornstarch molds, and I'm sure you can, yeah, maybe you can a little bit. You see that texture? I mixed up silicone out of a tube with cornstarch, 2 parts cornstarch to 1 part silicone, and I just smushed it against a rock. There's one, and there's one. Now, this is actually a rock. This is a real rock, but I don't know if you can see those 3 bumps. I mean, they're almost perfectly in a row, so it probably wasn't the best specimen. That's this rock. That's what made these that I said look like a moon rock. You don't want to use that too much, or you need to alter the appearance of it. So let's spray it with our release. It's starting to not spray very well. I need to open a new can. We'll spread it out a little bit this way. Okay, let's pick this rock. We're going to press it in and pull it off. Move it around a little bit. Press it in. And you want to keep these clean because if they get mucky, then they're going to pull material off and then you end up with the sandy finish that we don't want. Now that is really subtle. I don't know if you can even tell, but it is much more rock-like than just what I could do with a trowel. All right, here comes more moon rock. And we don't want to put it too close to that. Or what we might do is just use this side of it and avoid the little bumps. Let's put it in, let's put it over here in this. Okay, it started picking up. And you don't have to do the whole rock with the same stamp. You can pick up this one. And I know you're probably not seeing the detail over here. Gonna have to get a camera person. Okay. That one picked up. All right, now we're going to use this roller. And I think this roller is called a slate roller. And we're going to start with it just really wet because I sprayed it down real heavily with some release before I put it in the water. And we're just gonna, now I am just lightly, just touching it, not pushing it. Let's go up. Just kind of get the tip of it there. Okay, it's starting to lift. So we clean off any cement that it picked up and we spray. Now, you don't want to get your release on the wall right here, and you don't want to get it on your trowel because we don't want to put anything on there that's going to keep it from sticking to the wall. So, and you can go over it a couple of times. And right there, I just got rid of a trowel mark, so that's kind of helpful. Let's just take this over all of these rocks. Okay. All right, that's bad. Let's clean that off. We're not going to move it though. We're not going to exactly fix it. I'll show you how we're going to fix it. And we're going to go along here. And go across here just one time. And then we're going to take our little moon rock. And this has got a lot going on right here. This gives it kind of a sponge rock look, maybe. I mean, I didn't realize how perfectly lined up the 3 bumps were on that rock out in my landscaping until I made this mold. I would have used another area. Okay. All right, now let's make sure our trowel is all clean. You can either use the wire brush. I've got a bucket of water down here, or you can take this bristle brush and remove the excess. I'm gonna move you back just a little so we get a wider angle. And oh, I think I've gotten, there we go. So this right here, that's where I pulled up a bunch of material that I didn't want to. But we're just gonna seal it back up with our damp. Now, you see how that's made kind of a little rocky looking pocket? Now that's pretty realistic for a rock. It's also going to be a great place to catch darker color. So it'll make the texture stand out when we put our color on. So any place where the roller tried to pick up material, I'm just going and I'm kind of knocking that down a little bit. Think of it as knocking down the texture. We're going to leave that alone. I like the way that turned out. All right, so we're going to dig out our grout. Now I've got this. This is a tool like you would, if you were redoing the grout line on your brick. This is what this is for, but it's great. If it's great to fix brick grout lines, it's great to make fake grout lines. So I just kind of go along here. I don't want to make them too straight because I'm not doing like cut stone. You could if you wanted. That's not what we're doing here. And I just kind of chunk. Now, music is really good to have when you're doing this. You kind of get a rhythm and a flow to doing this. I'm going to save some of this because we might want to add some height to some of these rocks. So I'm not going to let it fall into the muck down below us. Well, that did. Okay. And you can see, I think, it's not, you can, this is a pretty deep hole right here. And that's okay. That rock is a little thicker. Plus, we're going to be filling what's in here with grout after the color's on. Be one of our last steps. I know there's a lot of steps, but I promise you get something beautiful that will last your whole life. Okay. Pop that out. And there again, we're going to save that. Ooh, I like that. See how that tore right there? but for lack of a better expression, it's super rocky looking. So we're gonna just kind of take our trowel in there and just kind of clean that up. You can always put your finger in there, push, just kind of. You can turn your trowel like this to cut away to get a good clean line. Okay, keep that wet so it doesn't stick. Now I'm taking just a point like this because I want to keep the shapes irregular. Otherwise, I would just put it in there like this, and I would just go along and just take out straight lines. But that's not what we're doing here. Okay, we're going to get a good cut line so that we don't tear like we did on the last one. If we did, we'd put it back, but I didn't watch the time to kind of give you an idea of how long you can work this stuff. If you do a small batch, you can play a long time. Oops, did I kick it? This tripod is really big at the base. Okay, now went a little straight there, and then so I zigged a little right here, along to the top. Push that back down. So when I'm doing this, because you know it takes a few hours to do a wall, even a wall that's just a partial wall like this one. I usually have an audiobook or podcast if I'm in a room with TV. Sometimes I'll put an old movie that I know by heart so I don't pay attention to it, but it's just background noise. So we're going to think about what we want to do here. Let's go on over here to this. Okay, there's our little rock that came from the riverbank. Now I did my kitchen backsplash. I think I'm putting a picture of that at the beginning of this video. I'll probably break this into multiple videos, but it will be, you'll see I've seen it somewhere. And I stuck a little rock like that down behind my sink, and I just like it. I'm not going to go all Bob Ross on you and talk about happy accidents, but sometimes that's what they are. Not that going Bob Ross would be a bad thing. I still want to copy his shtick. Okay. Now I've gotten a little thick here in the material, in the product. But that's okay. And we'll talk about it when we get to the grouting part. But I know like over grouting is quite a trend right now. So you have the option of doing that. You could even paint this white. You could forgo doing the, see, it's a little heavy. We'll put it back in just a second. You could forgo doing the natural looking colors on this. You just get your shapes the way you want it. Let's push this in like that because that's wanting to come loose a little bit from the wall there. Get your hand down in there and smooth that out if you need to. Remember, we're going to come back and put that cute little rock in there. You could even get a hold, if you have like semi-precious stones, if you could even embed things like that in there, turquoise,
You could put seashells that you found on family vacation. You could put those in, embed those in here so it looks like the rock came from a quarry that used to be at the bottom of the ocean. Now, this is a pretty big chunk of, this is going to be a pretty good space of grout, but you know, that happens sometimes. So I'm going to probably leave it like this. So if you get a place like that, that was really trying to fall out. I'm going to spray it. I'm just going to really smush that back up in there. Don't want my fingerprints to show, so we'll... Although, if you wanted to put somebody's hand, put kids or grandkids or your own handprints in there, you can make it look like cave people did carvings. It's your wall. You do what you want. And your personality will determine how much time you want to spend fussing. Fussing is my favorite part. So that's one reason that even when I'm not filming, I probably do smaller batches than most people would do. Because I like to be able to play with it as long as I need to get it right, the way I want it. I like to fuss with things like this. If you don't like that, you'll want to make great big rocks and you'll want to get them up there, do some simple texture like a slate roller, and move on. Get your grout lines in there. You may be one that wants to just do a great big rock face wall. These are amazing for wine cellars too. Maybe you have a small room. You could do this and turn it into a wine cellar. Now, I've got, I don't know if you can see it, but there's some, you know, there's lots of little crumbles and edges that I don't like, but we'll fix that after it sits for a minute. We finish our carving and it sits a little bit. We'll come back and start cleaning that up. I tend to rush it just a little bit. When you watch the instructional videos, and I'll put links to some of those from the company, they show you letting it sit a little longer, but they almost always are working with the crew. And you can let it sit too long, and then, you know, it goes to past that point of no return, and you end up having to scrape material off the wall because it becomes unworkable. This is not the most expensive product in the world, but nobody wants to waste. It's actually, as art products go, as building products go, it's pretty inexpensive. Okay. This is getting a little mucky. Now see how I'm treating each side of the grout line with a different line. So one side of the grout line is not mirroring the other.
Okay, let's not put another little rock here. We're just gonna make this have a little bit longer tail. We use the free tools called fingers for some of it, kind of so that you don't get an unnatural edge right here. I saw someone did a wall once like this, and they did big blocks. I think they made it look like sandstone or limestone. I can't remember which. And they did hieroglyphs in it. That was really neat. Okay. All right, here's an example what we don't want to leave. Now, it's very unlikely that the farmer's going to go out in his field and he's going to find a rock that has this curve and this perfect matching curve. So we're going to mess this symmetry. We're going to mess up this perfection just a little bit. So do we want to take it off of this or this? Let's go ahead and take it a little off here, a little off here. That didn't really help. Let's take this off here. Let's see what we have. And also, it won't hurt if in some places you get your grout line a little narrow. Now, you don't want to get it so narrow that you can't, because the way we put the grout on is we're going to put it in a tube, like a cake decorating bag, but for mortar, and we're going to squeeze it in there. So we need to make sure that it's big enough, but not all your grout lines are going to be perfectly the same size. Some of them are going to be narrow. Let's push that down in there. Yeah, I like that. All right. And there are some painters, little painters. Can't think of what they're called right now. But little painters tools. What are they called? I'll think of it as soon as I turn the camera off. You can bring those in if you have them and kind of do little interesting things. Now see, we kind of let our grout line get narrow there. Too perfect right there. Looks like it was cut. Of course, sometimes, you know, a rock will crack in a very geometric pattern, but not on our rock wall, it won't. We will beat it into submission. All right. So the little painter's tool, I'll think of it in a minute. Palette knife. A little painter's palette knife would be handy for places like this where you want to kind of round out that. And I can tell you from the way I move it around, this little rock is hanging on by the skin of its little rockness. So we're going to leave it alone. And then we're going to go up here where we met our previous rocks. Ah, there it went. And that happens because there's not a lot of mass on these little rocks to hang on to. I did have one that I did like that fall off once when I was going through putting the sealer on. So I just cleaned out behind it, and I used some like anchoring cement mix, and I basically just glued it back up there. Okay, we're gonna spray this, gonna spray that. We'll see if we can get it up there. If it falls out, we'll do what I said there. We'll just glue it in, and that'll be just fine. You'll never know the difference. You grout around it, and the grout will hold it in place. May try to slide now because I put so much stuff behind it. It's a little funny looking, got a lot of little fingerprints in it, so we'll smash it. Yeah, I don't like that. I'm gonna think about it a minute. So we need to put a rock here, and we need to put a rock here. At first, we're going to start. We're kind of to the point, really, that we can't move material around much now, but we can clean up edges. Like, you're not going to take this rock and like thin it out unless you just shave some off the top, which you can do. If you kind of go an eyeball and one rock is sticking out and you don't want it to be that way, you can just take your trowel, a square one might be better, and just shave a little off. Here, I'll show you. Are we in a place where you can see? This one's a little thick, I think. So you can just put your trowel under there. Just shave it off. Okay, trowel wet. Go back, because rocks will do this sometimes. Make sure you don't leave trowel marks. But there, it's kind of a little rocky looking thing to do there. So I don't know if you find this part. Now I had initially kind of sketched in to put another trowel mark in there, but I don't know if I want to now or not, because it's going to make it too much. This rock, see, I've got this line running right here, will be too much like this rock, and we don't want that. This is what I'm talking about. It's real easy to get patterns, and we want random, because nothing screams man-made like a pattern. Let's put a little more texture back there. See, I don't know if that shows up, but just that one roll right there gave it a nice slate texture. Okay, so I'm gonna let it sit a little bit, and then I'm just gonna take the trowel, and I may go try to find a palette knife that's the right size, and go inside here and kind of do something to some of these, clean up these little edges, or maybe not. Rocks aren't perfect along the edges, and plus most of this inside here will be covered by grout. You'll never see down in there. So you don't want to agonize over what the inside of that grout line looks like. I think I need more coffee. I consume way too much coffee when I do this stuff. Okay. Now there's nothing wrong with having, you know, a few rocks that really are not like the other ones, because sometimes you'll be out walking and you'll see a rock and you think it's nothing like any of the other rocks around here. So that's natural. But if you have one, you probably want to have one or two more. You don't just want to have them all, and you don't want them grouped too close together. So you kind of want to stand back and look. Now, a razor knife can be good for this. Do I have one? Nope, I don't. So sometimes we can get in there and clean that up. Sometimes rocks will have cracks. Oh, we're going to put a crack in this one. We're going to be kind of like we have had too much coffee, kind of jiggle around. Nothing too linear. Okay, and then one side's going to be offset a little because of that crack. And there again, these are great things when you start putting color on, because these will catch the color. So it's not a grout line. We will not be putting grout in this, but it's a crack in the rock. You see that? Let's get this. Ooh, I kind of like that. Let's get that. Okay, we'll let that sit a minute, and then we'll clean it up. There's some little raggedy stuff. We'll clean that up with the bristle brush. So let's see, can you see? So I need to make my grout line here. Can you see? So what I do there is I just do that. Make sure you want to remember that this rock is probably, just imagine this rock is like 8 inches thick, and it's just stuck in here. And the other side of the rock is on the other, on the outside of the house. It's not, but just keep that in mind when you're laying these out. We're gonna cut. Okay. So you see, we have rocks, and that is, so some of you are going to find this terribly tedious, and then you say, why in the world would you want to do this when you can go buy rocks? Other people were going to say, how cool, I can make them exactly like I want them. And that's kind of the way I look at it. I can make these look exactly like I want them. They can tell the story I want to tell, and I just think it's fun.
Now let's put some vertical cement on top of our foam stones. Now in this method, we're using the mesh that we stapled over the foam as our scratch coat. So we're just going to pick up some of that vertical cement with our gloved hands, and we're just going to smush it into that mesh. And then we can immediately start building up however much thickness we want of the cement on top of that. And like a lot of things, it's a lot easier to show than it is to tell. So I'm going to show you, I'm going to do this section that's here at an easy camera level. I've been working up high. I'll show you all of that. And I'll try to situate the camera close enough so you can see what I'm doing. And I'll just do sort of a small section here. Okay, so you can see where I have gone up to the ceiling. I've also done the far side that's out of the screen. The darker stones on the lower level
are the most recent batch, and you can see how much the color changes drastically. And you'll see when I start putting this batch on how dark it is. And you always panic a little when you see how that darkness, but it very quickly starts to lighten. Now, this is not by any stretch of the imagination the finished product. We will go back and do coloration on the stones that don't have integral color. Then we'll go back and grout the joints. So I've mixed up a batch of our standard vertical recipe. I do have this a bit wet, but it will set up. Now, ideally, when your mix is just right, you can hold your trowel up. Well, it's not too bad, and it won't fall off. This is not ready yet. So what I'm going to do, this is what I've learned is the easiest way to get this on with this procedure, using our foam substrate and our netting. And it's very, very technical. You just slap it in there and smush it. And now this is not serving as our grout, but we do want to smush it down in those grout lines so we get that continuous coverage, a continuous membrane of cement. Makes it less likely that we'll have cracks. When you have cracks, that makes it more likely that pieces can fall away. I say that, but I just don't have that happen, but it's because I really try to pay attention to getting that continuous layer and to really measuring pretty carefully. Sometimes I get a little more water than I should. But in this case, for what we're doing right here, it actually works better. And I do have heavy duty contractor paper. It's they call it a leak proof or a spill proof paper. You hear those little crumbles hitting the floor. And if you pick those, if you keep your floor swept before you start each day, and you sort of pick up before they have time to dry out, you can kind of use those little crumbles. But if you still have remnants left from the day's work before, you don't want to do that because you don't want to pick up essentially gravel. You don't want to pick that up. I'm going to stay more over here because when you do a stone here, you have to wrap it on the side, and I don't want to move the camera with my yucky hands. I have some little artist trowel or palette knives, and you can use those if you really have a small area and you want to really smush it down in there, because you don't want it just floating on top of the mesh. You want it really in there behind it, because that's what makes your nice sturdy surface, because you don't want it any flex. And I don't know if you'll notice I've got a couple of screws in here. This one, when I was pushing down the net, I felt like maybe I'd missed getting the adhesive foam right there. There was a little bit of bounce to this, so I just put a drywall screw in there. And here, I just felt like I had not supported this mesh enough, so there was a little bit floppy. So there again, I just put a drywall screw in there. Okay. And I'm sorry, sometimes I just stop talking. I'm not very good at talking while I'm doing things like this. This last bag of mortar mix had some dried, some set bits in it. I don't know if I just had it long enough, it drew moisture, or if it was like that at the store when I bought it. So I tried my best to not pick those up when I was mixing, but see how wet this is. One thing I didn't show you before I started this, I misted down the surface. Just remember, you always want to apply your cement to a wet surface because it's going to draw the moisture out of everything it comes in contact with. And if you have moisture, number one, it sticks better, and number two, it's less likely to pull away as it cures. Of course, if we didn't have the foam shapes here already, we really would just slap it on there to get a workable mound and then start cutting our stones. But since we have this little situation, I found that it's more sculpting than it is anything else. Just treat it like you would if you were putting concrete for a sculpture and you're putting it over your form or your wireframe or whatever. Looks bad now, but we'll work it into something better here in a minute. I'm trying to keep it about 1/2 to 5/8 inch thickness in most places. I will let there be a few places where there's, a bump out like there would be in any rock. So I'm going to go ahead and leave this stone to do a different color. And you want to go ahead and move. It's a little hard for me with the camera, but I'm across in front of you. You want to work from all sides of your stone. Sometimes that's hard getting your ladder against the wall. You can spray your gloves down too if you feel like your material is starting to stick to your hands. Because any dirty tool, whether it's your hands or a trowel or something, a texture tool, if it's dirty, the material is going to stick to your tool or your hand and not your surface. Now I see some of the mesh right here. Let's see. All right, I'm going to spray down my trowel. And there again, I have the protective. I'm going to step in front here and grab some toweling. I'll just wipe this off a little bit. And I have this larger palette knife. Now you want to finish it all the way around, even though mortar is going to hide where it meets the back of the wall. You want it to be a finished stone so that when it's time to do the grouting, you aren't trying to hide things you were careless about at this stage. So I've done that before. So that's why you want to make sure you see your stone from all sides as you're finishing it. And I mostly use the bigger trowel rather than the little palette knives. But they are definitely handy sometimes. Okay, I see a tiny bit of mesh right here. I'm going to take some of this. Where did I see it? right here. And I also keep some scissors that are dedicated to this because they do get cement on them. If I see any wayward pieces of this mesh string sticking out anywhere, that happens quite a bit. As you work with it, some of the edges will unravel. And you want to leave enough room that you have a decent grout line. And you don't want to work it to death because you will have some sharp edges in rocks where they broke, or maybe even where I'm telling myself some farmer built this 100 or 200 years ago, and using just the skills he had or she had. Okay, there's something there. We gotta click that out. Go ahead and leave some little indentations. Now, I will use a texturing tool, either like this kind on a roll. I think this is a slate texture, or this is the, I'll put a link to a video of how to make these cornstarch and silicone stamps. It's just amazing. But we want to wait. I am notorious for rushing this step right here, the stamping step, or the texturizing step. And then I end up pulling off cement mix instead of stamping. And I make a mess on my texture. It's just awful. It's ridiculous. So I have a lot on here. And this one's going to wrap around. I'll do that real quick, but we'll edit that out because you won't be able to see that. And you can move your material around. I've got an awful lot on this one. I do some of them a little more thickly than others because of what I'm trying to do. If you want to do a more cut stone finish, what you can do is you can just take a piece of a coat hanger and you can decide, I want all my stones to be 3/4 of an inch thick. And you just give that a good bend at 3/4 and then bend it again. And then you can always just stick it down in there to make sure that you're at your 3/4 depth and not exceeding it. They make tools, they make depth tools, but I found that works just as well. I just put a bright piece of tape on the part, I make a little handle with an extra bend and I put some bright tape on it. But since we're keeping this fairly thin and we have the form under it. Now, things like this can be really interesting when you're doing a rock. You want just really primitive looking effect. Now, the grout line's a little big there, but that's kind of the look I'm going for. Just a I'm going to leave that the way it is. I will come back over it and put some texture on it. And I'm going to go around the side here and finish this, but I'll edit that out. We'll be right. We'll move on to something else. All right, this has been sitting here for a few minutes. I went around and worked on this side. And so it's had time to sit there and incorporate itself a little bit. So I'm going to work this a little more. We've already worked that one pretty well. It's still not ready for texture yet, so we'll leave that alone. Come over here to this one. And I'm pressing fairly firmly. To really make sure that that's mashed in there. We don't want there to be any air pockets. We can still add more to it or take away. Right now we're just kind of making sure that everything has contact with everything else. And I want to stress, we're making sure that we don't see the mesh on the stones, but in the part where the grout will go, we do want to still see the mesh for the most part, because we want to leave a deep enough grout line that the grout will be able to hold on to something. And that texture, leaving that texture visible, kind of gives it a little bit of like a scratch coat hang on to. Now, if you say you wanted your rocks to look like river rocks, you would make those like a big round pebble. You would want to go ahead and do a rounding shape. Make sure that all your edges were very rounded off. It's hard to describe this, but like right there where I just pushed, you could tell it was kind of jiggly, like it really wasn't making contact behind. After you do this, it won't take very long, and you'll feel that when you run across it with your trowel. You think, oh, that's not making contact somewhere. Got another one of those little strings. So we'll put a little bump in the rock there where that string was. Now, I could clip that off, but sometimes things like that give you a little bit of an opportunity to do some creative shaping with your stone. I had sort of gotten too far down into the grout there too. So let's clean that up. There's going to be nothing smooth and shy about these rocks. Now, if you feel like your surface is getting too sandy, that means you're introducing too much water to the surface. Now, that means you either need to let it sit for a while longer, or instead of like moistening your trowel, you just need to keep a rag and dry it off. Because when you add moisture to the surface, the sandy ingredients will rise to the surface. So it's better to use a clean tool, but a dry tool. Now, at first, when you first start working this and you're trying to spread it out, then it can be helpful to have moisture on your trowel. But when you get to the finishing part where you're actually compressing the material you put on here. And you see this pile of mess right here because off screen I went around and did that side, so that I'm letting that sit till it can be worked. some. Yeah, I got a little thick there. Got a little fat. Oh, that's right. That's where that pesky little, let's just do a little bump right there. And you see, I take way too long. I take longer than is necessary, really. But I like doing it. All right, so regardless of what kind of texturing, whether you're using a mat like this, a homemade one that you bought, or you're using one of the rollers that we'll try here in a minute, you want some kind of a release. And I found this Icona concrete form release, and I found it on Amazon. And the reason I got that is when I go to my concrete supply store, the quantities they have are just more than I need for most projects. I don't want to have, a 5-gallon bucket of this stuff try and take up space when I have limited storage space for my materials. So I could buy 2 of those quart spray bottles, and I have been using this one for, 3 projects now, and it is, I can't see, it's half full, maybe. You just don't use that much of it. Right. But you definitely want a release of some kind. Okay, it's still not ready. And the reason I know, let me see if I can get you up close enough to see. You see that sand showing up here? That means that instead of pressing and making a pattern, it pulled away. And that's not what we want to happen. So we are going to let that sit just a minute longer. I'm looking to see if we want to attack this big rock. I'm looking to see if I have enough. Now, one thing you want to do before I forget, you want to make sure you keep your release bottle and your water bottle very far away from each other. Because if you spray the release and then try to put the material on there, it will release it. It will not stick. You'll have to let it dry and take a wet soapy rag and wipe it all off and let that dry again and then start over. So I'm making sure I have my water bottle. I'm going to spritz that down. Now what I did here, this rock looks a little weird. I had 3 pieces of a rock here, and I stood back and it just, for some reason, that bothered me. So I just put some of the spray foam in here and I connected them all with mesh. Wet this down here. It doesn't have to be just soppy wet, but you want some moisture introduced to it. If you have maybe like an old TV table or a folding card table, some kind of surface that's sturdy enough to hold, a batch of your concrete mix. I don't have that here because of the camera. I found I couldn't do it. I couldn't have it all here. So normally when I'm not filming, I have something that's more at a usable level. Okay, everything's pretty well covered on this big rock. All right, I worked over on the far side for a little while. Let's see if this has set up enough to do some stamping. I know this one hasn't because I've just been working on that one. Yeah, so we're getting impressions, and I'll close in on this a little bit so you can see, but you want to keep moving your stamp around. And you want to take it around the corners just a little bit too. All right, now it's starting to pull up. Now also an option are the rollers. Now this one is getting kind of dirty. The thing about cleaning cement at the end of the day is it looks like you have most of it off, but then when you go back and it dries, you see all this white and you realize it wasn't as clean as you thought it was. A pressure washer is great if you have one to clean your tools up at the end of the day. If not, just the highest pressure on your hose. And this is one of my favorites. And just stop. See, I have a tendency to want to do too much, and then we'll take it around the other direction so we get a different set of prints. Right there. That maybe pulled up just a little because I added to that one after I did. Yeah, that's pulling up. So we don't want to do that. That one's not ready yet. Let's see if we can work on this just a little bit. This is one I made a long time ago of the silicone and cornstarch molds, and it didn't really turn out very well, but I still have gotten some use out of it. I didn't knead it fast enough, so I wasn't able to spread it out very far, but you still get some neat textures from it. And I just keep checking to make sure that there's not material building up that will make it cause a problem. And I'm pushing pretty hard. The thing about stamping, I think, is that it's ready, concrete's ready to stamp about the time it's almost too dry to stamp. Does that make sense? At the window that you have for getting a really good outcome on a stamp is very small, I think. And finding it, it's just sort of a trial and error kind of thing. I have a very definite end of the trowel mark there. See if I got rid of that. I think so. This one, it will be better. It will be more noticeable when it is not so shiny and we get some color on it, but I feel like that's a pretty convincing rock.
And that's video 5. In video 6, we will color the stones. We'll talk about what kind of pigments you have to find that will stand up to the caustic nature of cement. We will talk about what kind of sealer to use, whether you want a matte sealer or a shinier sealer, and we will get these things grouted. And then in the video 7, we'll do sort of a wrap up. I'll give you a complete list of sources where I buy my materials. We'll talk about some of the options for other projects you might want to try, different ways you can apply this miraculous medium. So until then, stay creative, stay curious, and always be kind.